So what we're going to cover today for my apprentices is the step stool project. What we're going to cover today is we're going to make the rear supports for the back of the step stool, the center step, and the top step. All right? I have all my wood close to the size that I need. All I need to do is I need to cross cut them on my chop saw here. And then we're going to pocket hole one, and then the rest of them, the steps, we're going to glue up together. So with that said, let's get to it. Now, the number one problem with having a miter chop saw or a combination chop saw is that you're limited sometimes to the width of what you can cut. The best way to fight that, the best way to counter that, is to actually stack two boards and raise your cut piece up. Now you still want to have a fence for it to lie against, so here I still have a little bit of fence so that I can cut this straight. What that does is it allows me, and I'm going to zoom in on this real quick. It allows the blade circumference, so I get to use more of the circumference of the blade to cut all the way through my board without having any leftover on the outside. Whereas if I relieve this wider board out here, I wouldn't be able to cut it. All right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to brace my support pieces. So once I've squared the end for my top steps and my bottom steps, what I'm going to do is I'm going to joint one edge on each, then rip the opposite edge, and then joint again. And then what I'm going to pay attention to on that last jointing is I want to make sure that one face is facing inward and the opposite face is facing outwards. The reason why I want to do that is when I have what we call an IO technique, or inward-outward, if my jointer is out by 5 degrees, so if I have a plus 5 degree angle on this one, and I have a negative 5 degree angle on this one, if you do the math, plus 5, negative 5, put them together, I get 0, which is a perfect edge. All right? So we're going to do that right now. So what I'm doing here is I'm taking my combination square and my pencil, and I'm laying out the final cuts, or the final length, for my top pieces, my middle step, and the rear supports. So now I'm cutting my rear support pieces to their final length because they've been squared before. So I'm cutting them to their final length of 13 3/4 of an inch. What I did was I just cut the rear support piece. So there's going to be 3 of those. Well, there's supposed to be 4, but there'll be 3 on mine in the back. One of them is going to get pocket holed in the top so that I can push down my top piece and secure it to my step stool base. So with that said, let me cut the rest of them. Now what I'm doing is I'm using the table saw to rip the opposite edge, so the non-jointed edge, parallel with my boards, just to make sure that they're square. So I'm going to do this to both the top and the bottom step pieces. I had already done this for the rear support, so that's why they're not in the clip. So this piece here is going to be my bottom step, and what I'm going to pay attention to is making sure that the grain orientation is going down and the adjacent board is going to go up. Right? Reason why we want that is that over the time of the board, we don't want both of them facing the same direction, or we get a giant U, or we call cupping. So we want it so that the grain is fighting each other. So this edge here, I'm going to mark as an inward face. So this is going to face inward on the jointer. This one's going to face outward. So I should be able to see the O. I shouldn't see the I. Let's do the same on our top step. So for our top step, we got our fresh cut edge and our other fresh cut edge. I'm going to put those faces down. Now this one's going up, that one's going down. So this will be our I, O. All right, and let's go joint them. So just to reinforce, the I side, when I go to my jointer, is going inward. So now I'm going to turn on my jointer. Run that edge through. Now I'm going to take my O, my outward side, and now when I put them together, I have a perfect edge. All right, there's no space between it. It's perfectly closed, and this will be ready for glue up. So what we're going to do now is, now that I have both edges parallel, all right, both faces parallel, now I need to make both ends parallel, and I need to make this end also perpendicular to my edge. So once I've finished doing those edges, I'm going to finish the 6 steps of squaring a board by squaring these ends. So I'll cut to that. So what's going to happen is these two panels are going to be glued together and then glued inside the dado to make the base of it. And then I'll take my rear support pieces, so I'm going to turn this around. And they'll get glued in the back to cover the dado, and the top rear support is going to have pocket holes in it to allow us to secure our top piece down. So I'm actually going to pocket hole this now. So from the center line, so wherever it is, you're going to do 4 tick marks or 4 marks to the left and the right. So I'm going to lay that out right now. So now we're going to go take this to the pocket hole machine. So just as a refresher, remember we want to put the layout mark in the center groove when we're lining up. So now we're going to power it up. There we go. Now I did this on purpose just to show you that the spacing doesn't matter exactly. Right? It can be evenly spaced at about an inch or less, just as long as there are equal amounts on either side. The best thing though is to get it as close as you can to the edges. Now if you don't get it right, it's okay, because again, you'll never see that piece, those pocket holes on your step stool. So this concludes the video on the rear supports and cutting up the top and bottom step. The next video, we're going to go over how to actually glue up the top and bottom step correctly. With that said, have a safe week.